Fog across the east. Rain pushing into the west. A temperature divide of nearly 8 degrees from one side of the country to the other. That's Sunday, the 18th of January. Right now, as I'm recording this Sunday morning, conditions across the United Kingdom couldn't be more different depending on where you are. And understanding why that S happening helps us work out what comes next. Let me start with what S actually going on out there at the moment. Across East Anglia, the East Midlands, and down through Kent, visibility has dropped significantly. Some areas are reporting dense fog patches. This isn't a light mist you can drive through carefully. In parts of Lincolnshire, Norfolk, and the Fenlands, we're talking proper thick fog. The sort where you genuinely cannot see more than 30 or 40 metres ahead. If you were planning to drive on the A14, the M11, or any of the country lanes through Cambridgeshire this morning, please take extra care. Fog lights on, speed right down, and allow triple your normal journey time. Now contrast that with what S happening in the west. From Cornwall up through Wales and into western Scotland, it S wet. Rain has been pushing in from the Irish Sea since the early hours. It started as drizzle around 4 or 5 o'clock this morning, but it's organised itself into heavier, more persistent rain as we've moved through breakfast time. Cardiff saw steady rain from about 6 o'clock. Glasgow's been dealing with it since 7. It's not torrential, but it's the sort of rain that soaks through if you are out in it for more than a few minutes. Temperature-wise, the contrast is remarkable. The Scottish Highlands this morning dropped to around 3 degrees Celsius. Some of the glens in the Cairngorms saw a touch of frost. Rural Northumberland, similar picture. Cold, crisp air. You can see your breath. Meanwhile, down in Plymouth and Southampton, temperatures are sitting at 8 or 9 degrees. That is the mild southwesterly airflow doing its work. Nearly 6 degrees warmer than Scotland, and we are talking about the same country on the same morning. London S somewhere in the middle. About 7 degrees this morning. Overcast, damp, but not actively raining just yet. The capital tends to hold on to its urban heat, so it rarely gets as cold as the countryside, but it's not particularly pleasant either. Grey skies, that threat of mist coming off the Thames, and enough moisture in the air to make everything feel clammy. So why is this happening? What's the meteorological setup behind this divided picture? We have a blocking pattern established over continental Europe, high pressure sitting stubbornly over Germany and Poland, that S bringing cold, stagnant air. The sort of air mass that doesn't move, doesn't mix, and just sits there getting colder and mistier at night. That's what is affecting our eastern counties. At the same time, out to our west, the Atlantic is doing what the Atlantic always does in January. It's trying to push weather systems our way. Low-pressure areas forming out near Iceland, riding along the jet stream, bringing mild but wet air from the southwest. That S hitting Wales, the West Country, and western Scotland. We caught in the middle. It is a tug of war. The continental high pressure wants to keep things cold and stagnant. The Atlantic low pressure wants to bring mild, wet weather. Neither side is winning decisively, so we get this split personality across the country. The Met Office issued fog warnings for the eastern counties earlier this morning. Those remain in force until at least 11 o'clock, possibly longer in some areas. If you absolutely must drive, please remember that fog can be incredibly patchy. You might be in clear conditions one moment, then suddenly plunge into thick fog around the next bend. Trust your eyes to adapt quickly enough. Use your fog lights, not your full beams. Full beams just reflect back off the water droplets and make visibility worse. Now let's talk about how this evolves through the rest of Sunday. That stubborn fog in the east isn't going to lift quickly. In mid-January, the sun simply doesn't have enough strength to burn through it. We might see it lift into low stratus cloud by late morning or early afternoon, but even then, you're looking at a grey, overcast canopy for most of the day. This is what meteorologists call anticyclonic gloom. It's associated with high pressure, so it S dry, but it S miserable. No rain, but no sunshine either, just persistent grey. Norwich, Ipswich, Peterborough, Lincoln, down through to Canterbury and Dover, you're looking at this pattern for most of Sunday. Temperatures will struggle to rise much. We reforecasting highs of only 4 to 5 degrees Celsius in areas where the fog persists. If it does manage to lift to low cloud, you might creep up to 6 or 7 degrees by mid-afternoon, but that S about it. Factor in that there is very little wind in these areas, and whilst that means it one to feel as bitter as if there were a strong easterly, it also means the air just sits there stagnant and cold. For those of you in Yorkshire, similar picture. The fog might not be quite as dense as further south, but you are still looking at a grey, cold day. Sheffield, Leeds, Bradford expect overcast conditions and temperatures around 5 or 6 degrees at best. Over in the west, the rain becomes more showery as we move through the day. What started as persistent rain this morning will break up into heavier showers with some brighter intervals between them. This is actually more typical Atlantic weather. You might get lucky. There could be some decent breaks in the cloud, particularly along the coast. If you are in Aberystwyth, Blackpool, or along the Ayrshire coast, you might catch some sunshine between the showers during the afternoon. But those showers, when they come, will be heavy. We are talking sudden downpours that drum on the windows and overwhelm the guttering. They want to last long, typically 10 to 20 minutes, but they'll be intense whilst they re-happening. This is unstable air, the sort of weather where you can trust what you see out of the window when you re-deciding whether to go out. It might look fine, then 5 minutes later you are caught in a deluge. Wales, particularly North Wales, will see the wettest conditions. Snowdonia could see 20 to 25 millimetres of rain accumulating through the day. That's a fair bit. If you are planning any hill walking, I do strongly advise postponing. The paths will be running with water, visibility will be poor in the cloud base, and it's simply not pleasant or safe. Western Scotland, similar story. The Highlands and the Islands will see frequent heavy showers. Some of these could turn wintry on the highest peaks. We are not forecasting significant snow accumulation, but above 800 metres, there could be some sleet mixing in with the rain. That is more of a note for the hill walkers rather than anything that affects lowland areas. Temperature-wise for the afternoon peak, the warmest spots will be in the south. London and the home counties should reach 10 or 11 degrees Celsius. That is actually a touch above the seasonal average for mid-January. Reading Oxford, even up towards Luton, similar temperatures. It might not feel that warm because of the dampness and the grey skies, but objectively it's mild for the time of year. Bristol and Southampton, you're looking at similar numbers. 10 degrees, possibly nudging 11 if we get any breaks in the cloud and a bit of weak sunshine. Further north, Manchester and Liverpool will reach about 7 or 8 degrees. That's reasonable for January, though with the showers coming through, it'll feel cooler when the rain arrives. Newcastle and Edinburgh will struggle to get much past 5 or 6 degrees. You are closer to that continental cold air, and whilst the Atlantic influence is trying to moderate things, you are still on the cold side of this divide. For those of you who are gardening enthusiasts, Sunday is not your day. In the west, the soil is saturated. If you go out and start digging or walking on the lawn, you'll just compact it and cause problems for the spring. In the east, whilst it's dry, it's too cold and gloomy to make outdoor work pleasant. This is a day for planning what you'll do when better weather arrives, not for actually doing it. If you are hoping to get out for a Sunday walk, here's my advice based on region, East Anglia and the southeast. If the fog lifts by lunchtime and you get low cloud instead, you could venture out for a walk. It won't be scenic, and you'll need warm layers, but the paths will at least be dry. Just don't expect any views. If the fog persists, stay home. Walking in dense fog isn't enjoyable, and it's easy to get disoriented, even on familiar routes. The Midlands. Similar to the east, but you might have slightly better luck with the fog clearing. Birmingham and Coventry should see conditions improve a bit by early afternoon. A brisk walk around the local park is feasible, but dress warmly. Wales and the West Country. If you are prepared to dodge the showers, there are windows of opportunity. Check the radar before you head out. If you see a gap in the showers, you might get an hour of reasonable weather. But take waterproofs and don't venture too far from shelter. Getting caught out on Dartmoor or in the Brecon Beacons in one of these heavy showers would be miserable. Northern England, the Lake District and the Pennines will be wet. If you are committed to getting out regardless, full waterproofs are essential. But honestly, this is a day to save the big walks for another time. A short stroll near home, fine. A 6-hour mountain hike, not advisable. Scotland, the west coast will be showery and blustery. The east coast will be drier but cold. If you are in Edinburgh or along the Firth of Forth, you could get out for a walk if you wrap up well. If you are in Glasgow or anywhere facing the Atlantic, expect to get wet. Now, let's talk about this evening and tonight because that's when things get interesting in terms of the temperature drop. As we move into Sunday evening, the skies will start to clear in parts of Scotland and northern England. When you get clear skies in mid-January after sunset, the temperature drops rapidly. We reforecasting a sharp fall after about 6 o'clock in the evening. Areas that were at 5 or 6 degrees during the day could drop to freezing or below by 9 or 10 o'clock at night. This creates a risk of ice on untreated roads. The main roads, the motorways, the A roads, they'll be gritted. But smaller roads, country lanes, residential streets, they might not be. If you are driving home late on Sunday evening in Scotland, Northumberland, Cumbria or Yorkshire, watch for icy patches. Bridges and elevated sections freeze first. Slow down well in advance of junctions. For those of you in rural areas, if you have any water features, ponds, or even just puddles in the driveway, they all freeze solid overnight. That is not just a nuisance, it is a slip hazard. A sprinkling of salt or even just some sand can make a real difference. Many of you will already know this, but it is worth repeating because a fall at this time of year, particularly for older folks, can be serious. Down in the south, Sunday night stays milder. London will probably only drop to about 7 or 8 degrees. The southwest similar. The cloud cover and the Atlantic air keep things relatively warm. You won't need to worry about ice in Cornwall or Devon overnight. One other thing to watch for on Sunday night, with the clear skies in the north and the moisture in the air from the earlier showers, we could see some mist and fog reforming in valleys. This is particularly likely in the Yorkshire Dales, the Lake District, and the Scottish borders. It won't be as extensive or as dense as this morning's fog in the east, but it's something to be aware of if you are driving late. Let me address something that I know concerns many of you, the health impacts of this sort of weather. We've had a pattern recently of temperatures swinging back and forth, one day relatively mild, the next day cold, then back to mild again. This is tough on the body, particularly for sinuses, joints, and respiratory systems. Many people have been feeling under the weather, not quite ill, but not quite well either. Headaches, congestion, general fatigue. Sunday's weather doesn't help with that. The dampness in the west, the cold and fog in the east, neither is particularly healthy. If you've been suffering with these temperature-related symptoms, my advice is simple. Stay warm, stay dry, and don't push yourself to go out if you don't feel up to it. There is no prize for braving miserable weather when you are already feeling rough. For the elderly and those with respiratory conditions, the cold and damp is a genuine concern. If you have elderly relatives or neighbours, particularly if they live alone, it's worth checking in on them today. Make sure they're keeping the heating on, that they've got food in so they don't need to venture out in the fog or rain, and that they are feeling all right. Children, on the other hand, seem largely immune to weather concerns. They'll want to go out and play regardless. If you've got young ones and they're desperate to get outside, the advice depends on where you are. In the foggy east, it's not ideal, but they'll survive a play in the garden if they wrapped up. In the wet west, they'll come back soaked and muddy, but that's what baths are for. Just keep the outdoor time limited and make sure they warm up properly afterwards. Looking at the bigger picture, what does this weather pattern tell us about what's coming next week? This blocking pattern over Europe isn't shifting quickly. That means the general theme of divided weather continues into Monday and possibly Tuesday. We're not looking at any dramatic changes in the immediate future. No major storms on the horizon, but equally no sustained, settled, sunny weather either. The Atlantic will keep trying to push systems in from the west. We'll continue to see this pattern of mild, wet weather in the west, contrasting with colder, drier, but greyer weather in the east. It's frustrating weather, really. Not dramatic enough to be interesting, but not pleasant enough to enjoy. For those of you who follow the models, the ECMWF and the UKMO are in reasonable agreement on this pattern persisting through the middle of next week. The GFS is slightly more aggressive with Atlantic systems, suggesting we might see something more organised, pushing across the whole country by Wednesday or Thursday, but there is low confidence in that at the moment. What we can say with more certainty is that this I's and T unusual weather for January, this sort of divided pattern with blocking to the east and Atlantic influence from the west, is actually quite typical for this time of year. If you look back at January weather over the past 30 or 40 years, you will find many examples of similar setups. It's not the beast from the east. That was a different animal entirely, with bitter continental air flooding across the whole country. It's not like the Burns Day storm either, with violent winds and dramatic temperature changes. This is more subtle, more persistent, and frankly more typically British. So, to bring all of this together for Sunday the 18th of January, if you are in the east, from Yorkshire down through Lincolnshire, East Anglia, and into Kent, you are looking at fog early on, possibly lifting to low cloud later, and cold temperatures. Highs of only 4 to 6 degrees. It is dry, but it's grey and uninspiring. Watch for ice on untreated roads tonight. If you're in the west, from Cornwall up through Wales and into western Scotland, it is wet and showery. Heavy downpours at times, but with some brighter intervals between them. Milder, with temperatures reaching 8 to 10 degrees, but that mildness comes with a lot of moisture. You'll get wet if you spend any time outside. The Midlands and Central England sit in the middle, a bit of both worlds, overcast and cool with the risk of some light rain or drizzle pushing in from the west as the day goes on. Scotland is split east to west. The west is wet and windy. The east is cold but drier. Both sides will see temperatures struggle, with 5 or 6 degrees being about the best you will manage. Northern Ireland gets the Atlantic weather, showery, blustery and mild. Belfast should reach about 8 degrees, but you will see frequent heavy showers through the day. Practical advice for today: if you can stay home, it's not a bad day to do so. If you must go out, check conditions before you leave. In the foggy areas, allow extra time and drive carefully. In the wet areas, take waterproofs and expect to get caught in at least one heavy shower. For tonight, if you are in the north, be prepared for ice. If you are in the south, you'll be fine, though it'll stay damp. This isn't a dangerous weather for most people. It's just inconvenient weather. The sort of day where a cup of tea, a good book, and staying indoors feels like the sensible choice. And there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. The comprehensive outlook for Sunday, the 18th of January, 2026. Whatever you are up to today, whether you braving the fog in Norfolk, dodging the showers in Cardiff, or staying warm and dry at home, I hope you have a safe and pleasant day.